Worm fishing in the Crystal Hollows is one of the few ways to make consistent money from fishing that isn't dependent on RNG. With a maxed setup and a good party, it's possible to make upwards of 50 million coins an hour doing this money-making method. Even fishing alone with far from maxed gear can net you upwards of 25 million coins an hour with very little setup and pretty low requirements to do. Worm fishing makes money because flaming worms drop worm membranes, which are used to forge gemstone chambers, a powerful upgrade to Divon's armor. Worm membranes have a 25% drop rate from flaming worms, which can be increased to up to 44% with looting 5. Because worm membranes sell for 55,000 coins on the bazaar and you can catch up to 1,600 worms per hour, you can see how this money-making method is very effective. In this video, I will be discussing the strategy, the rates, and the gear you need for this very effective money-making method. And with that, let's get right into the video. To start worm fishing, the first thing that you have to do is find a spot that allows you to worm fish. As you can see in the Sea Creature Guide, flaming worms can only be caught in lava in the precursor remnants. This means in order to worm fish, you normally have to find a magma field structure that generates high enough to intersect with the precursor remnants. As you can see, this time I found a Khazad Doom that generated within the precursor remnants, and then found a spot where the lava went high enough that it went to Y level 64. Once I found this spot, I dug out an area big enough for me to fish in so that I could fish the worms into a pit behind me. Although it may look silly, you only need one block of lava in order to worm fish. Once you're here, there isn't really much to it. All you have to do is sit around fishing up worms and throwing them into a pit behind you until you've entirely filled up the mob cap of 60 worms. Once you've entirely filled the mob cap with worms, you can kill them and receive all the loot. This entire process of filling the mob cap with worms and then killing them took me about 3 minutes and 10 seconds, and on average would give you 22.5 worm membranes with looting 4, or 26 worm membranes with looting 5. On this specific round using looting 5, I got 23 worm membranes, which is a little less than average, but still is worth 1.3 million coins, and I got that in a little over 3 minutes. This means with max sea creature chance and fishing speed, along with looting 5, you can make 26 million coins an hour with this money-making method, but there are ways to increase this drastically. One of the best optimizations to worm fishing you can make is worm fishing in a party. Because of the way that loot sharing works, each player in your party besides you increases your profits by 20% up to 5 additional players. The way this works is that all players fish their worms into the same hole at the same time, and once mob cap is reached, all players damage the worms once. In my opinion, the easiest way to do this is using the Dreadlord Sword, because the Dreadlord Sword deals relatively little damage but also has a large enough AoE to damage all the worms at once. Once all players in the party have damaged the worms, the player with the highest looting kills the worms, giving all the players all their drops. This means if you're fishing in a 6-player party, you're making double the money than you would be fishing alone, with the only caveat being fishing with so many players can increase downtime. Personally, to decrease downtime, I recommend fishing with a party of 2 to 3 other players max if you have max gear. If you have significantly below max gear or max stats in any way, you can fish in parties of up to 6 and it'll still be very efficient. Because each player in your party besides you increases your efficiency by about 20%, if you're fishing in a party of 4 players, you are making 40 million coins an hour. The next optimization you can make when worm fishing is using the Totem of Corruption. The Totem of Corruption both increases the health of the mobs so that every player in the party can hit them once with a Dreadlord Sword, but also gives you obfuscated 1 trophy fish. The last ways you could optimize trophy fishing would be either leveling pets when killing the mobs, or by selling the corruption books, the sulfur, the corrupted fragments, or the eternal flame rings that you get from these worms. However, those make relatively little money, and so in my opinion, they're not really worth it. Also, for anybody wondering, the setup that I showed you earlier and the setup that I'm using now are very similar, and they're kind of just up to personal preference, so I recommend you try them both and see which one you like more. Just to review, by fishing solo with max stats, you can make 26 million coins an hour. By using the Totem of Corruption, you're then making closer to 29 million coins an hour. On top of this, if you're fishing in a party of 4, you are making 45 million coins an hour. All of this does not even include the giant rod, the most overpowered fishing item in the entire game. By using the giant rod, you would increase your fishing efficiency by about 45%, and if everybody in a party of 4 was using a giant rod, you would be making upwards of 65 million coins per hour. The craziest part about all of this to me is that pretty much none of this is affected by RNG. While there is a tiny bit of variance because of the fact that these aren't guaranteed drops, hour on hour you're going to be making pretty much the exact same amount of money. With all of that discussed, I want to talk a little bit about what gear you should be using to wormfish at each stage in the game. Outside of the Crimson Isles, max fishing stats are 100% sea creature chance and 300 fishing speed. You should also be using fish bait, which gives you 45 fishing speed, so you actually only need 255. Of course, the best possible fishing setup you can use for worm fishing is full Magma Lord armor and a Hellfire fishing rod. If for any reason this does not get you to max stats, you should also be using Gill Splash, cloak, belt, and gloves, and a Thunderbolt necklace. However, you probably don't need this. The best attributes to have on your fishing rod are double hook 10 and fishing speed 10. Of course, fishing speed just helps you get to 255 fishing speed much easier, but double hook gives you a chance to catch 2 sea creatures instead of 1. By having double hook 10, you're essentially increasing your efficiency by 5%. You should also be using the Flash Ultimate enchant, because when Flash procs, it gives you the fastest catch time possible. It used to be bugged, but it no longer is, so this is a really good enchant to have. The last item that you need to be maxed for worm fishing is the Ammonite. Because you'll be fishing underground, your fishing speed would normally be drastically nerfed, however, the Ammonite negates this effect. The Ammonite is actually one of the most necessary items you need in order to get into worm fishing. You could have the best lava fishing setup in the world, but if you're not using the Ammonite pet, you're going to be fishing really slowly. Now I'd like to discuss the lowest end that you should be doing worm fishing. Although you can catch flaming worms from fishing 19, I don't recommend worm fishing until at least fishing 27, so then you can use the Magma Rod. If you have the fishing level for it, you should of course be using Thunder Armor before Magma Lord Armor, but if you don't have that, you should be using Shark Armor and as many pieces of the Lava Sea Creature Armor as you can. The different levels of Lava Sea Creature Armor have different fishing requirements ranging from fishing 27 to fishing 35, so once you have fishing 35, you should be using entirely Lava Sea Creature Armor. One of the great parts about worm fishing is that even if you don't have the best gear in the world, if you're fishing with a party and you're using the Totem of Corruption, you're still going to be doing significantly better than if you weren't doing those things. If you're wondering how much money you'll make at your stat point, you can join my Discord server, which is linked in the description, for a tool that will help you approximate how much money you should be making. With that just about wraps it up for this video. I really do recommend that you try out this money-making method because of how strong and consistent it is. You don't have to rely on RNG at all, and it can make you a ton of money. If you're curious about where I've been for the past year, I've mostly just been living life and not playing Skyblock. However, I missed making content and I missed playing, so I decided to come back. If you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate if you liked the video and subscribed to my channel so I can get back into making content regularly. Also, if you have any ideas for future content, put them down in the comment section below. With that, I'll see you guys later, and adios.